Well, hello. This is going to be my video on my Dark Night of the Soul experience and what that did to me and how that has impacted my life. First and foremost, if you haven't seen the previous video, What is the Dark Night of the Soul? I'm going to put a link to it down in the description. And I'm also going to put a link to my good friend Jay's channel, Faith Evolved, who was the one who kind of pushed me into this, not in a bad way. He sort of planted the seed of the idea that I should talk about my journey, like what happened to me through the dark night of the soul, through my spiritual journey, how I arrived to where I am today, and just my life story, I guess, in a way. I don't know if I'm going to go through my whole life story, but I think it's appropriate to give some kind of context to my life because there's a lot of things in the past that have led up to this, right? So I can't just TLDR it too much. I am going to try to keep too much out of it that isn't really relevant. Like, I'm not going to talk about what is the Dark Night of the Soul so much. I may touch on like some tidbits here and there because that's what the previous video is for. So if you didn't see that, go check it out because that's where I take about 30 minutes to break down from my perspective and just kind of a general consensus on what a Dark Night of the Soul is. So this is just going to be more of me talking and walking you through my personal life journey, where I am today, and where I'm going, I guess. And yeah, so let's kind of start. Maybe I'll give you kind of a quick, I don't know, 5-10 minute breakdown of kind of my life leading up into the Dark Night of the Soul and kind of where that sort of started and where that corresponded and culminated in my life, I guess is a good way to put it. So for the first 17 years of my life, I was born and raised as a Catholic. Okay, so I believe in Catholicism. I went to Catholic church, Sunday school, the whole shebang, communion. Um, Around the age of 17, or well, a couple years before that, I met a friend named Carlos in high school. I went to a vocational high school, so I took a trade, which is cabinet making, and I sort of met him. There was like a bus we take back and forth to get to school because I didn't drive at the time, and so I met him, and he was a biblical Christian. He was always reading the Bible on the bus, and I just kind of he was an upperclassman, and he was in the same shop as me, so I like hit him up one day and started talking to him, and he was real friendly to me. He'd always say, "Hey, what's up? How you doing?" So I just talked to him one day on the bus, and we just talked about the Bible, and I had tons of questions. I was like, I want to know this about God, what that about God, and he kind of broke it down. He was like, "Hey, it's in the Bible. Hey, the Bible says this. Hey, the Bible says that." And I was like really impressed that all this wisdom and these answers that I've had, even though I was born and raised Catholic, was like right there in the Bible. I never really read the Bible correctly or properly or for my own sake. I always sort of took what the priest or the Sunday school teacher or whoever like told me, whatever they told me, they were like, "Oh, well, this is what the Bible is, or this is who God is." And I'd be like, "Okay, whatever." So I went to a Bible sort of church camp from his non-denominational church at the age of 17, and that's where I became a born again Christian. So I was saved, quote unquote saved, that whole thing, and I became a born again Christian. And then I was still going to Catholic school, Catholic church, but then I was also going to like the youth meetups weekly, the youth group. On like Friday nights, they would have music, worship, Bible preaching, the youth pastor, and I would just go there and I loved it. It was awesome. I was passionate. I was like on fire for God and all that, and really found a home there. And then over time, I think things kind of broke down. Like the youth pastor Sean, he moved on to somewhere in New Hampshire, which he's still at now. And he started like a sort of a youth ministry, expanded it. I think it was called like Youth Storm back then, and so he was really pushing that and into that, which is what it is. So then that kind of, I guess things kind of like, I don't know, fell apart in a way. People kind of drifted apart, and I kind of moved on from there. And then kind of over time, I would like be in and out of different churches. Jay, I went to your church a few times. I, participated there, and we had like you and myself, we had that like those meetings and stuff we would go to, like I think it was like the adult men or like the Bible study weekly, and you always pick me up and we kind of hang out and go to your church for a while. So that was like another, what was it, a Pentecostal church? Yeah, that was I forget the exact denomination name, but I was going there with you for a while, and things like that. And then from there I kind of like drifted in and out of different churches over time, and then kind of through my 20s I would get busy or kind of wouldn't go to church for a period of time. And then, eventually I was led to this Baptist church kind of in my late 20s, early 30s kind of time frame, I guess you could say. And then from there, I sort of just drifted out of the church completely, for kind of a number of reasons. But the TLDR there is that I was a Christian. I was also into like televangelism, like Creflo Dollar, Kenneth Copeland. So name it, claim it. The prosperity gospel. You can manifest if you pray hard enough. God's gonna answer your prayers. He's gonna make you wealthy, keep you healthy, make you successful at life. I believed all of that, and looking back in retrospective, it's kind of interesting that like manifestation and believing in that is something that's actually not entirely inaccurate, but it's a little bit complicated. I'm not going to get into too many like off topics. I really want to focus on my journey and my story. So I'm not going to like really talk too much about like my spiritual opinions so much in this video. I may do some future videos where I get into more spiritual topics, but I want to really keep this focused on like my life journey as it pertains to the dark night of the soul and kind of how that came about. So I mean, there's more in my backstory there, but I'm kind of just trying to give you an idea that I was basically a Christian my whole life, and I would drift in and out of different churches for different reasons, whether it was just work life or school life. I was in school for a number of years. I was working full time, going to school, going to church on Sunday. I mean, I had a lot of irons in the fire. I was busy for a lot of a big part of my life in my like mid to late 20s and early 30s. I was just constantly busy. I had something going on. Days off were not days off. It was like I was in school or something was going on, or I was hanging out with my friend Sean at the time. He was my best bud at the time, so we'd be hanging out like all the time when I had downtime. So I mean, I was out, I was busy. I didn't have time really to like stop and think for myself too much. There was some downtime here and there. But life just kept kind of going in motion. When I would get coming in and out of like relationships with like girlfriends here and there, and kind of there'd be periods of like drought. There'd be periods where I just kind of just wanted to veg out and like my downtime just play video games or go home and relax. Like I didn't want to deal with too much because I was so busy. But that being said, I was always believed in God. I always had faith. I always believed in the finished work of the cross and repentance and the Holy Spirit and the whole idea of like you got to be saved to enter heaven. There's hell and there's all there's consequences for your sin, and you got to be a good moral person, a good Christian, listen to the voice of God, be obedient to God, repent, pray, seek his guidance, seek his wisdom, and all of that. I would pray for like my relationships, and there was a lot in my life that I had going on. So I would say when I was working at, I don't want to say the company. It's not a. I'm not worried about any kind of like legal backlash, but I think it's just better if I don't name the company for kind of. Anyways, I was working for a company, and during the time, it's probably around like 2014, yeah, 2013, 14, right around that time frame. Um, I had kind of a rough relationship, and it wasn't the greatest, and then things kind of ended weirdly, and it was kind of tough on me. And I think that relationship sort of was a catalyst to a lot of things. There was a lot of trauma from that relationship. There was a lot of personal struggle with like personal beliefs and identity. And I think that's where the kind of dark night of the soul or the breakdown of my paradigm really started, because at that point I started looking into other spiritual practices outside like the Christian norms. Like I started to look into Buddhism, meditation, some like metaphysical aspects outside, again, normal Christian values, some of it kind of new agey, quote, whatever, might fall under that spectrum at the time. But I wasn't, too into it. I was just kind of like looking into it, kind of looking up videos, asking questions, saying, "Oh, what's this meditation thing?" I started actually actively meditating quite a bit. I have a lot of stories actually I can share about my meditation experience during that time frame. Some phenomenally like trippy experiences that some people will be like, "Oh, that's demonic." Oh, I'm not going to get into the whole debate of like, spirituality being evil and demonic, and there's a lot of misconceptions out there. This is not the video for that. I'm just kind of gonna again, I'm just touching on that in sort of what I went through and what people might say about these things and their feelings on it, or they're like, "Oh, it's evil," and like, no, it's really not. There are things that can be evil. There are things that can, if not applied correctly in your life, and if you misuse or abuse things, yes, they can lead to like evil manifestation or results that can occur. And really, I think the word evil needs to be used a bit more loosely there. I think it just means, if you allow others to sort of guide you instead of listening to your inner voice and to your inner intuition, and allowing, trusting yourself to lead yourself in through that guidance. And yes, you can get into trouble. You can get ripped off. You can get taken advantage of, and that's where kind of like the evil, I guess, can kind of come in. But anyways, that's just, I feel a need to always give a little bit of context to everything I say. But I know, I tend, my character, I tend to be very long-winded. I tend to just jump into like tangents. This video could end up being like 3 hours long before I know it, because I just can ramble. And so that's why I made that video before, because I know myself, and I would just sit here and be telling you like all these things about what the Dark Night of the Soul is, and like it would probably make this video even longer, which I don't have a problem with talking that long, but I want to get to the point and try to keep this as concise as I can. So I was looking into like other spiritual things like Buddhism and meditation, how to like reach the astral plane, your astral self, how to come outside of yourself, reach like inner peace, open the third eye, things like that. I was looking into all of that, okay? But then for whatever reason, I actually fell away from that. Even that stuff, I kind of dropped off. That kind of like dropped off for me. I kind of stopped meditating. We move into like 2015, 2016 era. I get into another relationship, and that relationship is probably the most significant relationship of my entire life, outside of God, of course. Nothing tops God, or like your parents, of course, they matter. But in terms of like impact, this relationship is probably, when I said the other event, the other relation, I'm not talking about the relationship I was referring to earlier as kind of being like the catalyst to all this. This relationship, if that was the catalyst, this relationship is like the launch pad. This is like the missile shooting off, like, oh, here we go, like, this is where things start, okay? So I'm in this relationship with this girl, and it's really rocky. There's a lot of like off and on. There's a lot of arguments. There's a lot of sort of. It's a very complicated relationship that we had. When you see the term like it's complicated, yeah, it's complicated. So it's just very. It's tough to describe, but it was challenging. That's a really good way to put it. So through this relationship, a lot of things were sort of being set in motion at this time in my life. Okay, I had this relationship, then I got a job. This job, I did have an NDA to, so I'm not going to name this company. Sorry, I get a little, this job I did sign an NDA to, so I don't want to say anything that might be, I'm not going to talk about specifics, but I just don't want to even name the company. So, that is what it is. But I was working for this company doing data entry, and unfortunately, where I lived at the time, the landlord was starting to sell the house, and I was renting their family and stuff, and I had to move. We were forced to move, and so that was coming about, and we had a time frame because he wasn't even make a sale like right away, and it took like a few months. I think what did he tell us? I think it was like 2017, 2017. So like 2016, like December, January, I think he gave us like a heads up, like, hey, I'm putting the house up for sale. And then I think he didn't put it up right away. I think he was just kind of giving us like a bit of a heads up, almost like a, like, hey, I know you're renting. I kind of giving you like a little bit of advance notice, kind of a warning, like, hey, you gotta kind of get ready to move out. So I think he was kind of doing us like a solid in a way, kind of like letting us know his plans because he had tenants downstairs, nice family. We knew them, we were friendly with them, and so at that point, I was just kind of working for this company and kind of figuring out like what am I going to do, and this is a data entry company, and while I was doing data entry for this company, I was like, well, can I had to actually eventually, because he did make a sale on the house. It was like May, June of that year. And I had to like make plans to move. And I was like, look, I gotta move out to like this other city, away, away from the city. And uh, I was like, I had to pull my like supervisor, my boss into a meeting. And I had to tell her like, look, I don't know what to do. Like, am I going to lose this job? I don't know if you'll want me working. She's like, no, that's okay. We can work this out. And it was really a godsend because she really worked. She went to bat. She was like, look, you can work from home 4 days a week, come in one day on Wednesday. That's the day. She's like, that's my office day. And so she's like, then, we could talk like face to face, see how you're doing. If there's any concerns, like if there's any concerns on her end, if there's any concerns on my end, we can come and meet and talk. And I was like, okay, awesome. I appreciate that. So that really helped me. I was able to work at that company for like another full year, I believe. So I mean, it was a contract job, so it wasn't like permanent anyways. But at the very least, I wanted to be able to work through the full extent of that contract, right? Until they said, hey, we don't need your services anymore, what have you. I wanted to work as long as they wanted me there. So, it was a good job. So I was able to at least keep that job for another year instead of just saying, hey, I can't work here. I'm going to walk away. Can we work something out? And we did. Um, and so just to also skip back a little bit, the girl I was in a relationship with, I met in the previous summer. So what was that? 2016. And then this job I actually picked up around, what was it, like December, I think, of like, yeah, 2016. So kind of almost the same time frame as the landlord putting the house up for sale. So then we go into 2017, and then like right around, what was it, June, my birthday month. It's also June now. Um, I had to move, and then I had to like I stayed in the place for like an extra week. I didn't want to move, and so everything was just kind of culminating. Like my relationship wasn't the greatest, and then I'm being like forced out of my paradigm of like where I live. I was living there for almost a decade. This was what, like, I think 9 years or 10 years, I think something like that. So like that August, it would have been like 10 years, a literal decade. So that felt like home. Sure, it was being rented, and I didn't own it or whatever, but it felt like home. If you live somewhere for long enough, it's gonna feel like home. That's just how it is. If you live somewhere for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, 8 years or more, that's a long time in the natural, in the 3D, like in this world. You're gonna feel like that's home, at least, even if it's temporary, of course. So it was hard to let go of that. I had a lifestyle there. I lived a certain way. I didn't, I had a car for a time, but then that car actually got in an accident. Got rid of that car, but I was used to like going on the T. Like I could get into Boston within like 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. I could be downtown Boston from where I live like very quickly. And I loved it. I didn't need a car. I could just get anywhere I want. I want to go to the mall. I want to go meet up with a friend. I want to go to the movies. Take the T, easy. So I loved it. I had the lifestyle. I could walk, as well to wherever I needed to go. So it was just very convenient. And I was so used to living in the city my whole life anyways, so it was just what I was used to. And so kind of being taken out of that element really led to a whirlwind. Like my whole life was just being broken down. I remember getting really upset, like I didn't want to leave, and I was just like, this is it. Like I had no choice in the matter. And so, you know, then I had to move, and then, I'm trying to hang on to this relationship through this all, and things. just really went kind of south for me. And we haven't gotten to the Dark Knight of the Soul yet. This is all like pretext still, in my opinion. Although I think contextually, I think the Dark Knight of the Soul did start for me probably even way back in 2014, at least compartmentally, where some of my like the paradigm shift like started to like lead into the full on Dark Knight of the Soul, because the Dark Knight of the Soul isn't necessarily something that is like you can't always like quantify it. Like a lot of people you see, they'll share this story and they'll be like, well, it started on this date specifically and ended on this date specifically. It's not how it really works. The height of it maybe on a certain time frame, like a certain number of months or years, but there will be pretext. Then you'll be in the like heat of it, and then you'll be on the other side of it where you're still recovering, and then as you go along, you're still kind of in it, but you feel a lot better, and like you're happier again. um but again, there's still like that residual like essence of it kind of going with you for a time. And that may not ever actually truly go away. And there are other, and you can experience other dark nights of the soul. So for me, so I move, okay, summer 2017, and then, you know, like 8 months later, we break up finally. The girl I was in a relationship with, so that relationship ended kind of officially. It was rocky all around, and it was a lot of ups and downs, a lot of sort of like, oh, we're breaking up, but we're not really breaking up, and there would be like time frames where we wouldn't even talk to each other, and then we would talk again. There was a lot of like making up. There was a lot of forgiveness given, a lot of anger, a lot of things that came out, and so it was like a whirlwind. And so at the time, my emotions, my like self, I was all over the place. And in a lot of ways, I kind of shut down to a lot of things. I kind of like kept things internalized. And so when I felt like I went through so much change in such a short period of time, through my work life, just the worry of that, through like my physical space of where I lived, what I was used to, having a relationship at the time that wasn't the greatest, and then that breaking down, and then having to sort of accept like all this change, like that, like boom, like that's it, this is happening whether you like it or not, this is happening. And so going through that, like I remember I stayed there for like an extra week or two, and I was like telling the landlord, like, look, I don't want to leave. I'm still gonna figure out a place to live. And I was like, I just really didn't want to let that place go. I didn't want to move. But of course, I had no choice, right? He already made the sale at that point, and he was just giving us a little bit of leeway, like, hey, you got to get out, and we can give you like another couple weeks or something. So I had to get out. And so, anyways, so fast forward, go through that relationship ending. I didn't even After that relationship ended, I had to take a step back, and that's where I feel the darkness of the soul really truly kind of started. If you want like an official kind of date to it or a time frame, I would say right around February, March of 2018. That would be about probably where the deepest depths of like my paradigm, my world is being shattered and like utterly destroyed. Is the best way to put it. And so that's where I was at, like my deepest, darkest points. And so going through the dark night of the soul there, it's tough to describe. There's a lot of sort of emotionally, at first I thought maybe I just wasn't processing things correctly. Like maybe I was just being closed off. Like I didn't really cry. I mean, I got upset at sometimes, but like the breakup, for some reason, I didn't really feel. Not that I didn't care. I cared a lot. I still care deeply, and that's a whole other. That's a video for another day on that specific specificity on like that relationship, and what I think about it, especially today, and things I've learned. But it's more like it felt like to me there was like this internal like almost like nothing in a way, like inside, like I didn't feel like that much. It was like this dull feeling. People would say it's what somebody depressed feels, right? They don't, where they get like numb inside. They don't feel anything. They don't feel sad, they don't feel happy, they feel kind of neutral all the time, right? So their emotions, you know, they don't get overly excited, but they don't also overly get sad. They're kind of just in the middle, right? They're just kind of like floating through life. That's what it felt like. It felt like I'm just watching these things happen almost outside of myself, almost like they're happening to somebody else, but not me. And I'm just the observer. Like I'm watching from over here or something, right? I'm watching that guy over there. That guy Matthew, he's going through this. I'm not going through this. He's going through this. That sounds that it's really interesting because people are going to be like, yeah, that's what the breakdown of the consciousness is, and that's what leads you into, higher spirituality, is realizing, the deception, or the facade of duality, right? And the fact that like we're all one, right? We're all God, right? Okay, I'm not gonna get, it's okay for me to get into that stuff, but I'm trying to really capture the story. So again, I'm stopping myself on these tangents because I know I can just run off into like a million directions. So I'm trying really hard not to deviate too much on things. So anyways, so it's sort of like, it just felt like I didn't feel really anything too much. Like, yes, I processed it mentally. I did feel a bit of emotion. It's not like I didn't feel any emotion, but it felt different than other breakups I've had in the past. There are other breakups where I cried, or I got like really upset. I felt heartbroken. I was really unhappy for like, 2 or 3 weeks or a month. And then you heal, and then you get over it. Not this time. This was different. It was surreal to me. I was like, what? I didn't feel that normal like heartbreak of like I need to cry myself into my pillow every night. No. And I was like, what's going on here? Like, what is this? At first I didn't really understand. I thought I was depressed. I was taking things like 5-HTP pills. I was looking up like solutions on the internet, to help myself. Like maybe I was just depressed or something. I couldn't figure out, do I need a therapist? I considered seeing a therapist for a while because I didn't understand. I was like, why do I like kind of not feel anything? There were times where I would take a pillow and I would go into the basement and just, I want to feel something. Like I want to feel like some passion or emotions here. Like give me something. I would just scream into the pillow as loud as I could to feel something. Like there was that like the lack of intensity made me want to be that intense. Like why do I not really feel anything? And it's like, but at the same time, this is like dull, like gnawing at you inside, and you're like trying to figure it out. So then I'm going into all these different paradigms. I'm going through either, spiritual paradigms and things I'm just starting to learn about. I'm starting to learn about things. But through all this, I'm trying to like process what is going on with me, and it felt like I was stuck. Like I'm just stuck in this place and I can't get out of it. I can't really change it. I'm just kind of there. And like, yes, to a certain degree, like I am experiencing things in my body, and it's me, but it just felt like this weirdest, I don't know, how do I put it, like this weirdest time frame of my life. And it felt like the most bizarre thing in the world to me. And I couldn't really explain it to myself. At the time I was like, this has got to be depression. That was like the only answer I had. I was like, there's got to be some kind of like psychological effect. Maybe I'm having like a mental breakdown. Do I have some kind of like mental disease? Like what is going on? And so for the longest time I was, of course I'm Googling answers. I'm looking things up on YouTube. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And it's interesting, for the longest time I didn't have definitions for any of this. That also confirms to me that this is what has really happened to me, because I didn't go out and try to like sort of have this experience and then force feed an answer or force a paradigm in that I already believed in, because that's not what happened. I found the answers much later, like the definitions of like, hey, this, what happened to you? Yeah, that was a dark night of the soul. this is what a dark night of the soul is. I didn't know from the get-go. I had no idea. I was like, this is something screwed up here. Like, why do I not feel, like I normally would, like after a breakup or after going through, some kind of traumatic event in my life. I felt like almost shut down emotionally in a lot of ways. And like almost felt like emotionally unavailable to myself is another way to put it. It was like I just wouldn't give myself that kind of satisfaction in a way, like that emotional, like that emotional release. That's a good way to put it. And so I felt stuck. Like if you can't get that release, the only, it's gonna kind of like, bottle up in a way. And I mean, like there were times where I would get emotional release. It's not like I didn't feel any emotion. It's not, it's not. I'm not saying was completely like devoid of emotion. That's not really what I want to emphasize. But it was more like I really couldn't wrap my head around processing what happened and sort of like putting it behind me. It was just kind of there with me. And so it was like I hit rock bottom in a lot of ways through all the traumatic events that happened to me in rapid succession, outside of my control, outside of what I wanted. And so, of course, eventually I'm going to seek spiritual answers at some point because I always believe, in God and have had faith and all that. So eventually spiritual answers are going to come in, right? I'm going to stumble on something. And so that's what led me to come into an understanding of things like, from the New Age perspective or the Urantia book or, just Christianity from different points of view, or even science or metaphysics or what have you. And so, through this journey, what I realized is that yes, I have went through a dark night of the soul. My entire world, my paradigms, my perspectives got broken down for me. They shifted completely. They just completely got shed from me. Like it's a shedding of the ego, a darkness soul being, just to touch on again briefly, like, you're shedding of the ego, shedding of your preconceived notions, your beliefs, your faith, your point of view on certain things of what you're so sure of, is true. Yeah. Good luck on that one. Cause that you just, everything gets shattered. And that's what happened to me. And so, probably from about like 2017, like I said, February, March, probably till about a couple years later, 2.5 years later, maybe like, 2020, maybe even 3 years, somewhere around that I'm ballparking. Is probably about where the Dark Night of the Soul kind of ended, like the height of it, like the inner depths of being in that. And then kind of post 2020, 2021, 2022, now into 2023 is where I've really started to develop out of it. And something that I, sort of realized through all this was a focus on love, like a focus on self-love, loving myself, improving myself, being a better version of myself. How do I do better? How do I love myself better? How do I love others better? Right? How do I improve my health? How do I just live better, in whatever way, even if it's a minuscule way. Like a lot of things I've overcome is like self-esteem issues, and just like not putting my foot down when people would treat me crappily, and I'd be like, no, that's not acceptable. Oh, I'm just joking, as an excuse to, like, as a put down, like in a friend group, but they like make fun of you. I don't tolerate that crap anymore. I cut that off. I go, look, that's toxic. I don't like it. I don't want it. Period. So things like that, like learning that's self-love. Like, hey, there's a line I don't want crossed. That's it. That's sort of like how I am now. And I see myself, like, I look at my old self, like in old jobs where I kind of like, in my old jobs, I tolerated a lot because I thought that's what you had to do to be a good worker. You can't speak up to the boss when he's treating you like crap because he's the boss. He can fire you, he can write you up. You can't say nothing. You got to put up with it. He wants to talk down to you and treat you like, you're this and that. You just got to suck it up. Why? Because he's the boss. If you say anything to him, he'll write you up and say you're being insubordinate. Nowadays, I would not tolerate it. If a boss is being toxic to me or has like negative energy or something, that I just wouldn't put up with it. I don't care. Write me up, fire me. I don't care anymore. Like that's just how I am now. That's my paradigm. My new like my shift. So things like that coming into like self-actualization, like that's self-empowerment, self-love, self-respect, self-value. That's a big part of this journey for me, has been sort of coming into like the fullness of myself. I'm still working on a lot of things, trust me. There's still things that trouble me, there's still things that I struggle with. It's not a one-day journey, and you can't beat yourself up either. You can't go, oh, I failed, or I fell here, or I did this. It's like when I was a Christian, and you think you're falling into sin, and a lot of other Christians and people would encourage you and say, hey, don't beat yourself up. God doesn't care if you sin 100 times. It's if and you fall down. It matters if you get up that 101st time and keep trying. And that's kind of the same view I still hold, is like, hey, I screwed up, or I didn't act in self-love, or I was toxic to somebody else, or I acted like negative, and I wasn't being respectful. I failed. And I kind of self-reflect and go, well, I didn't fail. Maybe I did in that moment, but that's okay, and I can make up for it. I can do better. I can like love others and be positive and create positivity. And so that as like a positive takeaway, that's kind of like where areas I've been like working on for myself, uh, through coming through the dark night of the soul, and kind of in the different paradigm I am today, and my like worldview and what I think about life. And through the dark night of the soul, just to say like, as well, I coming out of it, I've looked into a lot of things like star seeds, um, Urantia book, Jay, just to say hello again, as you watch this, because I know you asked me about this. I've looked into Urantia. We've had plenty of conversations about Urantia. I've asked you a bunch of questions. I still need to look into it more. And then, looking into other things like world perspective, worldview, what I think about things, New Age, spirituality, and, you know, sort of like religion and science. And, I'm very, my approach, after going through all this, I'm a very practical person nowadays. I tend to, I know a lot of people think I kind of come across as like I don't want to say atheist, because I'm not an atheist. Probably the furthest thing from an atheist, but I tend to demand like evidence and proof, and so I'm very like factually grounded nowadays. I'm very sort of stern in my approach to certain things. Like if there's not proof for something, you can't prove it to me, if the evidence is not there, I'm going to question it, I'm going to doubt it, and I'm going to say, table it to either I don't know, or whatever, if I have like anecdotal evidence or anecdotal proof. So I become very like sort of grounded in a way in my spirituality. But I think spirituality is very practical. I think it's a lot more practical than people seem to realize. I think people always overemphasize like the woo and the woo woo. Even in Christianity, they overemphasize like the the grandioseness of it, where they make it something like bigger than life and further, all the way over there, away from you. God's over here, like a million miles away. Yes, he's in you, but he's over there, and you can't like reach him. And and they kind of like, they contradict in what they say, because they go, yeah, the Spirit of God is within you, but then God's a million miles away, and he's unreachable in a way. Like it's like the standoffish mentality where you got to like worship big in a church, and you got to be in a band and singing loud and praying in tongues and doing all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, you don't need any of that. You literally do not need any of that. The most important spiritual thing that you need is yourself, and to trust your inner intuition to understand and how to navigate life, because the Spirit of God is within you. And to realize that the simplicity of everything is what is really where it's at. It's in the in between. It's in the silence. It's in those moments. That's where you're in the sort of inner depths of spirituality, if you will, in the inner depths of love and touching the face of God, I guess, like or source, if you will. So that's sort of like what I've come to believe and sort of accept. And a lot of people like I label myself because I don't really have a better term to use besides like New Age. But there's a lot of New Age concepts I really don't really agree with, or I think they're just kind of a thing. Like when people talk about, I just feel the need to talk about this, like tarot cards, and you'll hear the Christians go, oh, that's demonic, it's evil. To me, it's a meme. I'm like, dude, tarot cards are just like going to a psychologist and getting professional advice. They're not going to tell you the future. They're just going to kind of give you insight on the questions you have, and you're going to take that insight and use it and apply it to your life or not. That's it. That's all it is. Nothing more, nothing less. And there are a lot of folks that do tarot that will tell you that I've seen like on Reddit threads, and they go like, at least the honest ones, I know there's a lot of scams out there and stuff, and that's also a big problem. But they'll tell you like, hey, I tell my clients or people that come to me like, I can't tell your future. I can't tell you. All I can really do is advise and kind of guide you and give you some clarity and some wisdom and share things to you. But that's it. Like I'm not a fortune teller. Like these are the good ones, that are honest about it. And that's okay. I mean, I think it's okay to get insight and wisdom from other people. What I don't believe in is when you give that person sort of authority or like idolatry or power over your life to where like you make them God. Like they're just a person just like you, just like anybody else. So they're not any more special. Now their truth could be different from your truth, and that's again that's a topic for another day. Where I do believe it's vitally important to respect and honor someone's truth, because their truth is always going to be different from your truth, but it doesn't make it any less valid or any less true, especially for them. But it's when you try to take like other people's truths into your own life, and that's not your truth, and that's where you get into trouble, and that's where quote unquote New Age and all that can get like kooky or evil, as people put. But it's really, I think a lot of spirituality just, we mislabel it and miscategorize it because we just use human terms to describe things, and in our simplistic language way of communicating, it's just the way we do things. But it's like, if I looked over Urantia and like New Age, and a lot of the concepts are just interchangeable. They just use different terms. It's like, we're all like, New Age might say that we're all parts of Source, and then Urantia will just say, yeah, it's a thought adjuster. Like it's the same. It's just a different term. It's the same thing. It's the same concept. It's just different terms. You say potato, I say potato. It's the same thing, right? It's just a different accent. But it's the same thing. And so, and I kind of got off a little bit of a tangent, but it's important because, through this journey, that's sort of where I've arrived to, is understanding that it's all about love, and that God is love, Source is love, Spirit is love. Different, again, different terms for the same thing. It's all God, and God is all good. And so, it's so simplistic is really what I'm trying to get across. And what I've realized is that, yeah, there's a lot of complicated terms and things that will explain spirituality and talk about like energy and like being an empath, or being psychic, or having spiritual, emotional like empathy, and sort of like different ways of describing things, like going through metaphysics, talking about like energies and vibrations and all that. And all that I believe in. It's demonstrably true through science when they talk about like energy and your vibration that you give out into the world, and like the energy you project out is what you get. What you give out is what you get back. And I'm not necessarily talking about like The Secret, because there's too much commercialism in spirituality, which that's another topic. That's a good topic to get into. Like all these people that want to charge you like $300 for like a 1 hour like tarot reading session. Like, are you kidding me? Like, no, thank you. Not to knock anybody, but there's a lot of that garbage. And again, that gives it all a bad name. I'm not trying to shame anybody for like their hustle in a way, in a respectful way, for the people that like mean well and they're just trying to make some money. And I get it. You got to make money in this world. You got to pay bills. You need it to survive and live. But I think there is a bit too much commercialization and people being taken advantage of, unfortunately. That goes for any spiritual sort of point of view. But anyways, that's just something I've kind of noticed through this journey, because I'm looking up these YouTube content creators and I'm listening to things, and then there's always that, like, oh, in the description, book a private coaching session with me for $250 for an hour. I'm like, you kidding? Like, I'll take everything you're giving me for free, thank you. Because you have to realize that it's okay to seek answers from other people. And so other people are going to have wisdom. They're going to have more life experience than you. You're going to have your spiritual gurus like Eckhart Tolle and like other people out there that just have more life experience, or more life experience in this area of like spiritual awakening or dark night of soul. And they're going to know more. And that's true. And that's okay to understand that. But at the same time, you have to take what you believe and what you accept, and you have to throw out old ideas and bring in new ideas and kind of move along, but you don't ever let them overtake you, and don't ever make it like a cult kind of thing. Don't ever like worship an individual. That's crucial, is to understand that the only person you should really be listening to is yourself, first and foremost. Like, that is your inner truth, your personal truth. That is what matters more than anything else. So for me, like, that's the empowerment I've come into, is like understanding that my truth, who I am on this eternal journey, that's what matters. Loving myself and loving others, being a light to the world, being the light, bringing light to others, walking in the light, love and light, right? You hear that term a lot, namaste, right? All these positive terms and these things that people sort of carry with them. And there's nothing wrong with any of that, And I think being practical in your spiritual approach, like for myself, it's really the way I take it. I don't even like, not that meditation is fantastic. Outside of like a spiritual concept, it's very healthy for you. It helps you focus the mind. It helps you sort of quiet the mind and be very focused throughout the day. It helps you calm your nerves. It can be therapeutic. It can be healing energetically. It's a fantastic thing, and I should do it more. I just, I don't know why I just haven't. Maybe it's just part of the journey where I'm at right now, where maybe for whatever reason, I'm just not led to do it. But if you feel the need to meditate, I can strongly advise and say to a certain degree that it's very beneficial. For the time period that I was doing it, I felt a lot of positive benefits. But if you don't feel led to it, then don't do it. It's that simple. You don't need trust. It's all this stuff that people try to tell you, like, you need this, you need that to be spiritual. You got to have a Buddha statue. You got to have crystals. You got to have tarot cards. Like, you don't need anything. You literally don't need anything, And if people judge you for that, if they say you're not spiritual enough, you're not new age enough, you're not this enough, like, who cares? Like, that's not relevant, And if you feel like you want that stuff because you like, maybe you just like how something looks, or you want it as part of your collection, okay, get it. Either way, like, it doesn't matter. Like, this is where the freedom comes in. This is where the empowerment, the self, like, love and understanding comes in. Like, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You don't have to copy other people. You don't have to emanate other people. Take their wisdom, apply it to your life, let it help and guide you. But at the end of the day, you got to be yourself, and that's what's most important here. And so, through the dark night of soul, just to kind of jump back, so, as to be on the timeline, so to speak, not just so much like what I've learned from it, which I just went through, but, going through that timeline, like I said, kind of around like 2020 and kind of further out, past like 3 years, because like I said, for the first 2.5 years was really the harshest time for me, dealing with the dark night of soul. And then I got out of that. And then ever since I've that period kind of ended. And let me tell you, the dark night of soul is something you don't really wish on anybody. Like, it's almost like you could say, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but at the same time, I'm thankful I went through it. And if you've never gone through a dark night of the soul, it's difficult to explain. It's not difficult to explain in terms of like what I went through, but to a certain degree, it kind of is, because it's a spiritual shedding of the ego. It's a breakdown of your worldviews and your paradigms, your beliefs, and there's a lot there. It's a lot to unpack. And I feel like I'm not even really doing it full justice still, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of like what I dealt with. And if you go through it, there are people that commit suicide during it. Like, it's very difficult. It's very depressing. It feels like a deep depression you can't shake. That's what it really feels like. If you want like an honest opinion, it feels like your world has collapsed, your world has fallen apart. You're just depressed like every day, and it doesn't change. It doesn't change for days, weeks, months on end. So some people, this can go on for like a decade for some people. Some people don't get out of it for a long, 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 long time. Some people, they go like a year. Some people go through it for like 2 months and then they get out of it. Some people go through it for like a decade, like I said, or, like 3 years. Kind of like my time frame was like a 3-year time frame, probably just about, give or take, maybe 2.5 years or something. But that's a long time. That is a long time, you know, and it wasn't easy. There were times when, like, yeah, were there thoughts that crept in, like, hey, yeah, they were there. I won't lie. Like, it was not easy. But coming through that, on the other side of it, there might be still some like residual, imprints there and fingerprints of it, like on my soul. But which of course will be there because that's what transformed you, right? That's why you shifted into higher consciousness. That's why you shifted into higher vibration. Your frequency gets elevated. That's the beauty of it. You're like a phoenix rising from the ashes when you go through a dark night of soul. You come to a higher sense of self. You come closer to your higher self, okay? Which again, is the ultimate goal. Because I believe the eternal ultimate goal of this, which I think a lot of people agree with, some people from like different new age backgrounds or like Buddhism or Urantia might have different terms for this, but the goal is to develop further in love, in eternal love, into the love of the Father or the love of God, to be perfect like He's perfect, to connect to Him, to be as He is, and to reach Source. And so we go through this journey, whether it's through reincarnation on the earth or other realms or planes of existence, the mansion worlds, as the Urantia book mentions it, through higher dimensions of reality. The goal is we go through this journey to reach perfection in love. And then it's an eternal journey. Once we get to that, there's more in store. It doesn't stop. It never stops. That's the thing that's amazing about it. Now, some people, and I believe this too, we come here by choice. We come to this earth plane, realm, place of existence by choice. We come to this low density, low vibration, sort of negative, heavy, burdensome place to learn how to love, to develop, to grow and become better. Because here's the thing, think of it like a weightlifter. If you're somebody who has a lot of muscles and you pick up like a 10-pound dumbbell, you're gonna lift that thing like candy. It's not gonna feel like anything. You're gonna be like, 10 pounds, that's a joke, buddy. 5 pounds, it's like a paperweight to you. It's not gonna feel like anything. But if you put the pressure on, and now you're trying to do like 80 pounds or something, 60, and you're like, okay, hey, there's some resistance there. Well, how do you get stronger? Well, you get stronger by dealing with that 60-pound dumbbell, and then then you can get to 70 or 80 or start deadlifting or whatever. You need resistance to grow. You need resistance to get better, to learn. That's what this journey is about. We're in this earthly plane to learn, to grow, and we have the most amount of resistance here for that reason, because you can't develop into true perfected love without resistance. It's just not possible. And this is my belief anyways, or my perspective on it, is that think of God as this eternal being who exists, and God as a person, because we're persons, and He has an identity. God, knowing everything, being all powerful, existing, knows the future, knows the past, knows the present. Nothing can surprise God. Nothing will ever take God by surprise. Everything that He's going to do, He knows He's going to do it before He does it. How boring would that be? How bored would you be? How could you learn? How could you grow in that state of being? Like, yes, you have everything. You're perfect. You can never fail, but you can't grow either. You're in a state of equilibrium, imperfection, yin and yang, in kind of, well, non-duality, but duality, in the perfected state of like, you're just in that zen of existence. Like, you're perfect. Nothing can like shame you, nothing can hurt you, but you can't advance either. So by God breaking himself down into billions, trillions of like different versions of himself, well, now there's myself, and now there's you over there, and I don't know what you're gonna do. Are you gonna walk down the street? Are you gonna ride a bike today? What job do you work at? What are your hobbies? What are your interests? I don't know. I have to ask you questions to learn these things, just like you got to ask me things. And that's the beauty, is not knowing. That's how we can grow. That's how we can make mistakes. That's how we can get better. That's how we can perfect love even further than what love was already perfected as in eternity. Think about that one. Imagine love growing exponentially upward for eternity, to become bigger and better forever. Like, that's what love is, because love can't contain itself either. It can't stay within itself, because that's not love. Love has to express itself outwardly and give and provide and share with others. And so that the only way God can do that is by giving himself away to himself, in kind of a funny way. But anyways, that's what it is. We're all God, or we're all a part or piece of God, or a thought, the thought adjuster, or however you want to say it. And that's the goal. We have a higher self. And you know i I didn't even realize like I had a higher self. My whole life I've had conversation, and I've talked, like, I didn't even realize that was the higher self that I was talking to. Like, that's something I learned through this journey. Like, hey, that's your higher self. You have a higher self, version. It's you, just in a higher dimension or higher plane of existence or spiritual reality. Like, it's you. And then there's the concept I've stumbled across in the past like 6 months of twin flames. Oh boy, oh boy. If you think that's a rabbit hole I've been going down for the past several months, and that's something new. And oh boy, do I absolutely believe it's true. And I believe I know who my twin flame is at 150%. I know. I just do. And it answered so many questions for me. And this is like going on 4 to 5 years out from all that I finally had these answers come in. And there's other answers that have kind of trickled in as I've gone. But that's the beauty of it, is I didn't have all these things up front. I didn't try to shoehorn these concepts into my life. No, and that's what also leads me to believe it's absolutely true, because these answers have come. And when these answers come, like, things got described in such a way where it's like, yeah, this is gonna happen, and like, you're gonna go through a darkening of soul, and then you're gonna go into a spiritual awakening, and then da da da. I'm like, that's exactly what happened to me. That is like almost to a T. That's what my life has been. And then that's like a confirmation for me. I'm like, wow, I'm mind blown by these things, because I keep learning things as I go, and I can't ignore it. Now, it'd be one thing if I was trying to shove a paradigm or belief I had, like if I was holding on to like the Christian paradigm, and I was going, well, this is because of God, this, and the Bible says this in this verse, and this is what it has to be. If I was doing that, that would be like a false light in a way. I know that's gonna sound bad. Christian will be like, oh, no, 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 how dare you? No, I don't mean that God is false. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, it's when you try to sort of create this falsehood out of the truth, but you use it incorrectly and apply it incorrectly because it's your paradigm. So you try to like shoehorn an answer in because that's what you believe. I didn't do that. I haven't been really doing that. And so all these paradigms being wiped and washed away from my life, and then finding these answers like years later to what I experienced, it's just like, wow, that's exactly what I went through. And it's just mind blowing in a lot of ways. But it confirms things, and I think it's good that I didn't get those answers, because if I got those answers even when I was in the darkness, so I probably wouldn't have even accepted them. I would have been like, yeah, whatever, this is just crazy talk. What are you talking about? So it's timing. It's being led spiritually, energetically, if you will. It's being led through this journey to understand more about ourselves and what this journey is really about. um and it's helped me to grow tremendously. And I know, I talk about a lot of different concepts. I'm passionate about a lot of things. I'm like, I talk about the financial stuff. Like, I know I've been talking about that on Facebook off and on recently, past couple years, a year and a half, whatever. I'll post every so often. And it's not to be like negative. It's not to be like a scare tactic. It's just awareness. It's really all it is. It's just an awareness. I just pay attention. I just have this like deeper wisdom of understanding like what these nefarious bad actors are up to. And it's important to be practical too, because practicality is really, in my opinion, is synonymous with spirituality. The practical is probably most likely the answer. It's not go and write down what you want to manifest on a notepad and, do this mantra over it like and that's like you can do that if you want, but that's probably not the answer. The answer is probably like just be a good person, the simple thing, like the simple answer, the simplest lowest denominator is most likely what you should be doing. Do I need to buy crystals, get a tarot reading once a week, go on a religious retreat around all these spiritual monks? Do I need to meditate every single day? And like all that stuff is great if you want to do it, but you don't have to. That's the beauty. You don't have to do anything. If you don't feel like it or you don't want to, don't. It's that simple. But everyone forces these things on each other like you have to do this. This is the only way. 10 what's that meme like, this one trick will teach you how to manifest, and Christian, I don't know, scholars hate this guy, that meme, right? It's like this one trick, it's like that's all just fugazi. It's da da da, like who cares? Like, it's not about any of that. And I do have a big problem with a lot of that stuff, because I think a lot of people seeking spirituality get taken advantage of, and I think they get hoodwinked, and I think they get fooled, that they think if they pay for this course or they go to this seminar that they're going to somehow change. And like, hey, if you need something like that, or if you're just interested, or you want to go to, I'm not shaming either. That I'm saying I'm not saying it's wrong like in a vacuum. I'm just looking at it from the way I see things, that yeah, there are some fantastic spiritual gurus out there, but you got to protect yourself. You got to watch out for yourself. You got to realize that a lot of these people are just commercializing things, and they're just trying to make money. What do they have good intentions on? I don't know 100%. I don't know them, but you got to be cautious. That's something I've learned on this journey as well, is don't get taken advantage of. Don't get fooled. But if you feel moved to do something, do it. No harm to it, but don't seek answers from others too readily, easily, because it will lead you to a bad path. Like, oh, you didn't manifest and I gave you all the tools. And isn't it funny how it's kind of like the running meme in a different area of life, when people people tell you how to make money online. Well, the way to make money online is making videos about how to make money online. That's how you make money online, right? It's kind of the circular logic there. It's like the way you make money online is telling other people through the videos. Then you make money online, right? So it's kind of the same thing. It's like, how do I spiritually develop myself? Well, you make videos about telling others how to spiritually develop themselves. And again, not all those videos are bad. Not all those people are bad. Not all of it is like a negative thing. It's just that there's too much of it, where I think people get sort of sidetracked and lost in the sauce. And it's like, just slow down, calm down, look inwardly, look into your own perspective, value yourself, and understand that you have all the answers you need. That's really the key takeaway. And so, for me, if I made this video probably like a year ago, it probably would have been a little bit more negative, or not negative, but like, I don't know, it's all a timing thing. I think, through the journey, it was tough. It's the toughest, probably the hardest, toughest period in my life, absolutely. Like I said, it's, I can't really do it justice and describe it completely, because there's a lot of moving parts there, but you do feel stuck and in the darkness, and you do feel like you can't move forward for a long time. And it takes over your life. It does. And, like I said, it's months, weeks, and even years on end where you're just kind of stuck in this place, and you can't really get out of it. It's out of your control for such a long time. And the biggest key takeaway while you're going through it is to be open to your paradigm shifting, your worldview. And the best thing you can do is what I did, is just seek new information, learn, be hungry for knowledge, go out there and try to find the answers. I know I say, like, don't trust other people, but I mean, seeking the wisdom of others in and of itself isn't a bad thing. But again, you got to be cautious with who you're giving your time and attention to. Don't let them sort of sway you into a bad direction. I know I'm saying that a lot because I feel like for myself, I'm very strong in this area. I've been able to resist these kinds of things, and I know, like, what is useful and what isn't. And so I kind of have navigated through this, like, sea of spirituality and stuff. And don't be afraid of it. And a lot of people who just label things as evil, a lot of that, unfortunately, I feel is just ignorant to say, because you don't know what it's like until you go through something like this, where, like, your spiritual paradigm, like, I was a Christian my whole life. I don't really consider myself Christian, or at least in the Christian paradigm or narrative anymore. But that was also a very important part of my spiritual journey, and I don't regret any of it. It's very important. And I don't, a lot of people, and this is something I feel I need to say, is they feel this need to go back to, like, Christians and the Bible and start, like, debating and attacking them, or like, attacking the narrative. Just, I don't do that. I'm just like, I leave it for what it is. Like, I respect it and it's there. But I don't sit here and go, well, here's why the Bible contradicts itself. No, I just leave it alone. I respect it for what it is. It was part of my journey, and that's it. I'm not going to go out of my way to, like, attack the paradigm, whether it's right or wrong, or, it is what it is. I'm not here to go and deface it, like, oh, I'm better than it now, so let me go attack it. No, that's not what we're supposed to be doing. You need to just love others, leave it for what it is. Like, a lot of people come out of the paradigm and they get angry over hell. Like, that hell isn't even the reason I left. Like, that was never even on my radar as a reason, believe it or not. A lot of people, that is, like, that's a big thing for a lot of people. They're like, well, how could a loving God send? That was never, like, in my, like, cross my consciousness of, like, my reason for, like, departing, I guess. Like, that was never even in the spectrum of my reasoning. It still isn't, actually. I don't sit here and go, well, because I understand, I don't actually disagree with the paradigm, I guess, for what it is. Like, where it's not God sending you, it's you making the choices that send you to hell. It's not God, he's not doing it. Like, it's you make the choice. It's like like, you kill somebody and a judge sentences you to, life without parole, or to the death penalty. It's like, yes, the judge is making that decision, but, like, you are reaping what you sow. That's just reality. Like, that's how it is, So I don't know. I take that perspective on it. Not that I agree with it anymore, but within the paradigm, I get it. So that's why I don't feel this need to go out and attack it and be like, well, God can't be all loving if he's not sending you to hell. He's not. It's that simple. Anyways, I don't know. I get on these tangents. Like, I do get a little bit annoyed, though, because I do see people go back and attack Christianity. It's like, bro, sis, like, that's where you came through. Like, love it and respect it for what it is. You might not agree with it anymore. You might be out of that paradigm. You might not be a Christian anymore. You might even be in another, maybe you didn't go through a dark night of soul, but you're in some other kind of spiritual paradigm. Just leave it alone. The Christians will take care of themselves. Be loving, be kind. If they have questions, sure, talk to them, and they want to, I guess, debate you a little bit. If you're up to it, talk to them, but there's no need to, like, attack it. So many people feel this need to just attack, and it's like, I don't understand that myself. I feel like zero need to go out of my way to, it's like they want to make an example of it. It's like, you don't need to do that. You really don't. Anyways, and if you feel like the people, because can you know what that feels like? It feels like when I was a Christian, how we viewed other people. Like, oh, they're lost, we gotta save them. They're paradigm. These atheists or these other religious people, they're wrong in their paradigm, and we gotta attack them and we gotta break it. It feels like the same thing. Like, oh, well, I'm in this new age Urantia Buddhism, whatever, this other spiritual paradigm, and I feel like the Christians are lost and I gotta deface their values. Like, no, bro, like leave it alone for what it is. Like, anyways, that's what it feels like. It's just shifting of the goalposts, and it's like the same sort of methodology that people apply. It's like it's just being applied now. Like, oh, I see all the faults of Christianity now that I'm not a Christian. It's just like when I'm a Christian, I see all the faults of atheists. It's like you're just doing the same thing. Like, I hope you're, anyways. Um, but I do see that a lot. So many people just attack, and then again, the Christians coming at us, or the the New Agers or whatever. Oh, crystals are demonic, and tarot cards are demonic, and being a spiritual medium demonic, and channeling demonic. Everything's demonic. Your mom's demonic. Like, drives me up a wall. It's just people, it's so hard for people to accept different points of view through love. And that's the key, is just walk through love, because everyone has a different story. Everyone has a different journey. You don't know their journey. You don't know where they've been and what they've been through and where they're going, where they are currently. You got to talk to them. You got to learn. And some folks stay in a certain paradigm for their whole life. Maybe there's a reason for that. I do side more on the side of like karmic cycles. I don't necessarily maybe believe in like karmic repentance, where like, oh, we got to repent for things, but I do believe in more of a, we're here to take care of things. We are here to learn and grow, and if we don't grow, like, we do continue. But I mean, I think we continue anyways. In whether you're looking at it from a different, whatever paradigm, I think we're all, we're not going to get to everything in one lifetime, right? Because that's not enough. In 3D reality, it's not enough time. That's why we need eternity to go through these 3D experiences and through these different versions of ourselves, and in the natural and these dimensions of reality. So I mean, you're not going to get to it all in one lifetime anyways, no matter what. So some people will say, well, the reason for that is because you got karmic sin or whatever, and you got to cleanse. And yeah, maybe. I see the karmic stuff as more like karmic cycles of like, we go through a cycle for a specific reason, and then we go to the next cycle and the next, and we're continuing to grow. But I mean, either perspective works. It really doesn't, I don't think that matters too much, like the ultimate, like the personal like reasoning within each journey, specifically like each life journey rather. I think it's more important to understand why you're here ultimately is to grow and walk in love and to become close to the source. But I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. That's my dark night of soul, jumping into where I am in present day and what I went through. And what it did for me is, again, it broke down my Christian paradigm, my worldview, even in relationships in general, just kind of like my worldview. Although I already have had a lot of beliefs prior to and during that time frame, but they've kind of evolved further. Just like how I see things, how I see the world. And like Jay, him and I, we did a Christian radio show called We Still Believe a number of years ago, and we talked about things like, I've always been into like Alex Jones and like conspiracy theories, quote unquote, and just questioning the narrative, questioning paradigms. Like, I've always had this passion about me. So I've always been open to like asking questions. I even remember back in the day, like reading the Bible and seeing like the term like, you are gods, be gods as I am, like Jesus would say. And I'd be like, oh, like, you are little gods, or you are God. And, when, so things like that, which I was like, huh. And then you say that, and then certain Christians will go, oh, that's blasphemous, or you can't say that. And it's like, but the Bible says it. They're like, yeah, but that's like a, they try to explain it away. But then you get people like Creflo Dollars like telling like, yeah, you can be like God. And so it's interesting that sort of seeing these things where I always saw kind of through the holes of the paradigm, at all times, like going back to things like 9/11 and questioning that, I'm just, conspiracy, the government, the New World Order, all that stuff. Like, I've always had this questioning, inquisitive mind. I seek a lot of knowledge. I'm very slow to speak on things. I'm very slow to even, like, this video took quite a while for me to get out, because I mull things over all the time. I think all the time. I spend a lot of time thinking, listening, and speaking, probably not as much as I used to. That's just kind of how I am. I don't like to speak out of turn. I take my time, and I like to be accurate. I like to also, when I speak on things like about maybe, the questionable things, like my perspective on the earth and maybe, the shape of it, things like when I get into things like that, I'm very slow to present, things because I might be like, oh, but because I'll see, like, there have been things I've wanted to post on like Facebook or just maybe make a video about, and I go, oh wait, but there's like 15 holes in that. I can't do that. This will debunk it, or this makes it questionable. I don't have this answer, or I'm not educated enough on the specific specificity of like this area of something I want to talk about. I need to research more. Then I just don't talk about it. That's how I am. That's sort of like my practical side. That's where I'm a very like sort of evidence and kind of like something has to be demonstrable to me, and that's where a lot of people will see me as I'm just very grounded nowadays. And the spirituality, going through the dark night of the soul, has really helped me to be more grounded and more focused on things, and to really take my time and consider things like even more than I used to. And so, again, I'm very slow to, I take in a lot of information, and I just develop it and go from there. And, that's where I am. And if folks are wondering like what this all sort of, the journey from my perspective, the journey is you go through a dark night of the soul into like a spiritual awakening, and then you start wrestling with the concept, which I heard about, and at first I didn't even understand what non-duality was at all. I was so confused. I watched videos on it and people talking about, I'm like, what are these people talking about? I couldn't even understand it. I was like lost in the sauce. I was like, this literally makes no sense to me. I couldn't make sense of it until I came across twin flames, and then had non-duality conceptually explained through the idea of twin flames. And now, when I go look up stuff about non duality, I get it. I haven't experienced non duality, at least not fully yet. And then at what's after non duality? Spiritual enlightenment. That to me is all the components. Now, you can go through multiple spiritual awakenings and dark nights of the soul before you truly get there. And spiritual enlightenment is not a destination. It's just another step in the process. It's not the end. It's really just the beginning. One of the beginning steps in the journey. People think, oh, spiritual enlightenment, the height of spirituality, like all these spiritual gurus like Sadhguru and, Eckhart Tolle and, whoever else, Buddha, during his time in the 3D, oh, they're spiritually enlightened. Jesus, he's spiritually enlightened. They know everything. And I'm like, not really. Spiritual enlightenment, yes, you'll have deep wisdom about life, and you'll have more knowledge than most common people who have not gone through spiritual awakening or darkness of soul, or have gone through the process to become enlightened. Yes, you will have advanced wisdom about life and how the reality really works and everything. But it's not the end all be all by any means. It's just really one of the steps in the process. Think of it as like step 3. It's like spiritual awakening, dark night of the soul, non-duality, spiritual enlightenment, and then there's like all these other steps way above and beyond that we can't even conceptualize in this reality, that we can't even come to fathom. That's it. That's really it. That's the journey, and I'm still on it. I still got a lot to learn. I got still a lot to develop. A lot of things I need to focus on, even in practical terms, in my personal life and spiritual side. Just going through the motions, and people who might worry, like, what happens when you come through the other end of the dark night of the soul? People think it's some, do you become this monk and like you lose all sense of, no, you're still yourself. I'm still me. I still like a lot of things I like video games and movies and TV shows and music and hobbies and doing the things, I like to do from before. It's just you have this higher sense of self. That's really it. And you grow, and you're still a person. You're not some weirdo. You don't, you can act that way if you want, but, a lot of people, it's just a very practical thing. You just kind of it's just spiritual faith evolved, as my friend puts it, as his channel is titled. Jay, that's really what it is. It's faith evolved, spirituality evolved. It's, you're growing, you're becoming more in tune with love, more in tune with spirit, more in tune with your higher self, more in tune with your self actualization, as a more like kind of a life coach would probably put it, like, or a motivational speaker. Become self actualized, and realize your dream. Whatever. That's it. It's not. It's so, to me, spirituality has become so unbelievably simplistic. Yes, there are some weird concepts and terms and things that might seem like out there or complicated, but at the end of the day, trust yourself. That's all I can say. I can't say it enough. Trust yourself. Trust your intuition. Don't trust somebody trying to preach you The Secret or crystals or what have you. If that's not your truth, or if you don't think that that jives with you, forget it. Dispose of it. Don't even take it in your life. Don't waste your time. But if you do jive with something, like I've considered getting a crystal, because they talk about energetic properties and how they can kind of like, it can kind of protect you and keep the energy balanced. And like dealing with like being an empath, I'm an empath, and so I take in energy from other people, and it's challenging sometimes. And so I've heard of, I think it's like I forget what it's called. It's like a black quartz crystal type. I don't know. I have to look it up. That I've looked up, and they say like, yeah, it can really help like kind of just keep the energy more balanced for you as an empath, and so you won't feel that like negativity as much, and it'll kind of like even things out a little bit and help take the edge off. So I've considered it. It's just a crystal. I mean, what's it gonna do? It's a rock. They're natural. They grow in the earth. Oh, it's demonic. Okay, yeah, crystal is demonic. Sure, buddy, right? So this is where I kind of roll my eyes, like, but do I believe in, you know, I may not believe in all like the crazy, I don't want to say crazy because it's disrespectful. I don't mean crazy, but all the points of like, oh, crystals do this and that and that. I'm like, I don't know if I believe that they do all that, but do I believe that they have the energetic properties they do? And like, there's a logical sort of reasoning to what they do. Absolutely, absolutely, because we are energy. We give out energy. We have an energy field around us. We push that energy out into the world, onto others, and we carry that energy with us. And so, if something can harness that energy or sort of block the energy or help you, uh, why not? It's like saying, you have like electricity and energy and things that have properties, and we have a way to control that energy through, we can harness the power of electricity. There's a lamp right to my right here that's on. Is that evil? No, we're just harnessing the power of it through technology. That's all it is. And some things are natural. People talk about grounding, like you should walk on the earth and ground yourself, and sunbathe, and things like that that's spiritual concepts, very positive and healthy for you. So a lot of people, again, they think it's all new age woo woo, and they think it's all weird or evil, or they don't understand it. And all I can tell you is, trust in yourself. And I think that's about it. I feel like I touched on, I think the more important part isn't dwelling so much on the dark night of the soul. Like, yes, it's important. Yes, it matters. But I think what matters more is where I am today. Like, who I am, the person I am today. That's more important to me. And I think that the steps that I have taken through this journey that have led me to where I am today is really just looking back. That's what matters. Like, yeah, I went through those tough times, relationship breakdown of the paradigms, and where my life has led to culminating to this moment, into like a higher sense of self and self-actualization, self-love, and understanding the world around me better. And I'm still growing, gaining wisdom, and it doesn't stop. That's the beauty of it. It's eternal. I may do some specific videos. Again, I try not to go into too many different tangents, and I know I repeated a few things, but that's just kind of how I am, how I talk. But I didn't want to go too far off into the deep end, and I wanted to make sure that I really touched on like my journey, my perspective, and kind of how I see things nowadays. But probably a good place to stop here. I want to make sure there's anything else I don't want to like that I left out that maybe I want to put in. But yeah, I think moving forward, I'm probably gonna maybe be more specific and talk about different topics. Whether, like, what do I think about the shape of the earth, really? Or even just spiritual topics like the commercialization of spirituality. That's a good one. Or um, more in depth of like what I really think about like new age stuff, like tarot and readings and mediums and all this other stuff, like more specifically. Uh, and maybe some like other advice or something. I don't know, but my voice is getting kind of raspy. I haven't had any water and I've been talking straight for like an hour and a half basically, so I should probably stop here. But yeah, that's Jay, I want to thank you again for basically talking me into this in a way, or just kind of nudging me, I guess, in this direction. I'm going to send you this video on Facebook. I'll post it on my YouTube channel. And for those that stayed all the way to the end, appreciate it. And I know this is not a typical video on my YouTube channel. I'm not a YouTuber, okay? I don't make videos for specificity or like for the algorithm or whatever. If like 5 people see the video, I don't really care. If 100 people, 200, 300, awesome. If it helps you in any way, okay, even double awesome. If it helps you, feel more comfortable about yourself, that's great. If some of the gamer folks out there that know me, people from like Twitch in that world, yeah, this is me, Zephyrs, as you know me, real name Matt. And this is a pretty serious topic, and it's been pretty impactful in my life for the past like half decade, if not, longer, but definitely the past half decade has been a really significant part of my life. Um, and that's it. So yeah, I'm gonna again put a link to my friend's channel, Jay, over at Faith Evolved. Check him out. He talks about a lot of spiritual concepts, breaks things down, mostly from a Urantia book perspective, because that's where his beliefs are. We don't always agree on everything. That's okay. You don't have to agree with everybody. It's okay to disagree. Don't worry about it. But by and large, he has some fantastic content. I watch his content usually when he posts it. So he gives a lot of good breakdowns on some of these concepts. He already has videos on them, so check them out. And I will also link, if you didn't see the previous video, what is the Dark Night of the Soul? I break it down. I will post a link in the description. Watch that first. I know I'm saying that at the end of the video, or watch it after. I'll make like a comment to say watch that first. But if you didn't, you can watch it after this. If you're confused, if you don't know what is this guy even still don't understand what I'm talking about, watch that video. It'll help you kind of understand the Dark Night of the Soul conceptually. There's other fantastic folks out there who have made videos on it that also talk about Dark Night of the Soul on like YouTube. So if you're confused, you have any questions or concerns, go ahead and ask me and I'll try to respond. And all right, well, peace out. Take care.